Good evening. My name is Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood. I am coming to you tonight from Little Rock, Arkansas. I am coming to you tonight on behalf of one of the guys that I work with who is on death row in Oklahoma, Scott Eizember. Scott, many years ago, committed a horrible crime that led to the deaths of AJ and Patsy Cantrell, and also led a whole litany of victims along the way. I believe that it was an over 40-day manhunt. I'll be perfectly frank, my reasons in coming to you tonight are to advocate for Scott's life. You see, my job as a person of faith, as a follower of Jesus, is to not only minister to the person on death row their spiritual needs, but also their needs in terms of their lives. You see, we can minister to souls all that we want to, but until we minister for the killing to stop, I don't know that we're getting anywhere that we want to go. Tonight, I am recording a direct appeal. You see, a number of weeks ago, I came across an article from October the 5th, 2020 in the Oklahoman by a reporter by the name of Josh Delaney. The article was entitled Death Row, Oklahoma. How long could you wait for your parents' murderer to be executed? In the article, there was an extended interaction with a woman by the name of Debra Wyatt. Miss Debra Wyatt. Miss Debra Wyatt is the daughter of Eizember's victims, AJ and Patsy Cantrell. One cannot hear her story and what she's been through without being deeply moved. The nature of tragedy and violence is that it leaves behind victims. It leaves behind heartache. It leaves behind destruction and grief. And there is no question in my mind that this is a family that has experienced those such things in tremendous quantities. There were comments from other family members in the article. But again, the comments from Miss Wyatt stood out to me. At the time, I responded by writing. I responded by, constructing this letter, open letter. And, as I constructed that open letter, I realized that as she encountered this letter, she would encounter, words on a page for someone that she has never met before. Well, now, I'm still someone that she's never met before, but I wanted her to see my face. I wanted her to hear me for a variety of reasons. I also want to point out that over my shoulder, beneath the clock, that is my son sleeping. It's late here, and he's supposed to be in his bed, but he wanted to stay up with his dad. I can't imagine what it would be like to experience some of the things that the Cantrell's family has experienced. But I also know that I can't imagine the death of Scott Eizember is going to in any way heal such grief, such pain, such heartache. So I decided I wanted to speak this, to speak some of the letter that I wrote, in hopes that my humanity might be able to speak to the humanness of the things that I feel as I work with Scott, as I'm involved in this situation. And so I think that there's nowhere else to begin except to say that I am so sorry, so disturbed, so devastated by all that you have gone through as a result of Scott Eizember's actions. I've said it many times in working with all sorts of families who have experienced tragedy and grief. I'm sorry is never going to cut it. I'm sorry is never going to be enough. I just want you to know that the words that I'm saying are coming from a place of deep empathy. So often it is said that people who advocate for the lives of persons on death row don't care about victims' families. And that is just not true. This letter, this video is coming from a place of tremendous empathy. As I have said publicly many times, I've done this work all over the country, and I can tell you that every guy that I work with, there's always tremendous heartache. There's always tremendous grief. There's always tremendous pain. And the question is always not whether or not anyone is perfect. It's the question is always, are we going to stop perpetuating the imperfect? Are we going to stop perpetuating the killing, the destruction? Miss Wyatt and your family, I have ascertained that y'all are seekers of God, followers of God, lovers of Jesus. All I can say is that I come to this space as I saw Jesus, seen Jesus, read in the scriptures, approach many different spaces, and that is out of a feeling of deep humility, wanting to connect. One of the things, Miss Wyatt, that I heard you say in the article, I read in the article, you said, "Oh, he's got a beard now." Speaking of Scott, his eyes are blank, like there's no soul behind them. Well, I can speak directly to Scott's soul because I am the person who has been given charge to minister to Scott's soul. There is a soul still there. No matter how much his appearance changes, no matter what he is now or where he's been or whatever, that now I can tell you that the Scott Eizember that I have encountered, his soul is still very much intact. While I am by no means an expert on judging souls, I guess you could say that only God is such an expert. I am an expert on encountering someone who is desperate to find a way forward in love, in grace, in mercy. Such a person is Scott Eizember. To be honest, Scott is like all of us. He is an imperfect child of God. And as such, he is someone who's made mistakes. Sometimes really big mistakes, obviously really big mistakes, with really big consequences. But that doesn't change the fact that he is a child of God. And it doesn't change the fact that God loves Scott Eizember in the same way that God loves you, Miss Wyatt, or loves me. God loves us. God does not want us to perpetuate this killing, this violence, this evil. Yes, there are consequences for our actions. There's no question about that. But those consequences are God's to met out, not ours. We are an imperfect people. We are people who have experienced all sorts of mistakes. But surely we are also a people who can move to be better. Surely we are a people that can choose to perpetuate life as opposed to perpetuating death. I also read in the article, Miss Wyatt, that you said struggling with multiple sclerosis. She is just a few years younger than her mother. First of all, obviously, anyone with a heart, any human being is going to say, my gosh, I hope that your health is in a good place, and I hope that you are improving, and know that you'll be in my prayers, and all such things. But the part that was really a struggle for me was the part where you said that you hope to live long enough to watch Scott die. Ms. Wyatt, I can assure you, you're not going to feel better watching Scott die. Full stop. You're not going to feel better watching Scott die. You see, we're told in the scriptures, throughout the Christian scriptures, throughout a lot of religious scriptures, that the thing that gives us life is life, not death. The thing that gives us life is life, not killing. The thing that gives us life is life, not executing. I'll be honest, I pray very hard daily that Scott will not be executed. The reason I pray for such a thing is because I know it is wrong. I know that you can't love your neighbor as you love yourself. You can't follow the way of Jesus and be zealous for the death of others. You can't love your neighbor as yourself and kill them. When Jesus called us to love the least of these, Jesus wasn't calling us to kill anybody. When Jesus said, "For God so loved the world," I don't think that he made any exceptions. I want Scott to know that God loves him. The way for Scott to know and to understand that God loves him is not for a bunch of people to want to kill him. It's for a bunch of people to try to love him. Now, Ms. Wyatt, I'm not asking you to go to the prison and all such things. But I am asking you to give me the chance to continue my work to minister to Scott. Scott Eizember deserves a chance as much as any of the rest of us to grow in a knowledge of love, to grow in a knowledge of grace, to grow in a knowledge of mercy, to grow in a knowledge of God. Miss Wyatt, I hope that you will consider those of us who love Scott. I pray that you will stop and think for a second about what it means for this man to be killed when there are those of us out here who will grieve his death. Is it going to help our society to perpetuate and reproduce grief? Ms. Wyatt, in the article you said, excuse me, you said, people ask, how do you get up in the morning after all you've been through? You said, what's the alternative? It becomes about the killer after a while, to make it exciting or whatever. But it's something we have to live with every day. And I'm not going to lie, there's been times I didn't want to wake up in the morning. Ms. Wyatt, I am so sorry that this whole process has made you feel like that. I know what it feels like to not want to wake up in the morning. I've seen difficult days. But I don't think that killing Scott is going to help your waking. The reason I'm making this video is not because it's all about Scott Eizember. I'm making this video because I believe that this process can offer redemption for those who desire to see Scott dead. You don't have to want to kill this man. You don't have to be part of this process. You can be saved from the killing. As I've said many times, I do believe that Scott Eizember is in God's hands. But I'm particularly concerned about your pain. Everything I have read that you have spoken, there is no doubt in my mind that your pain is real. There is nothing, absolutely nothing I can do to alleviate that pain. The only thing that I can say is I know that the execution of Scott Eizember is not going to alleviate anything. If anything, it's going to add to your pain. I want to make it very clear. Jesus heals us by giving life and not by taking life. The message of God is one of love and life, not of execution and death. Miss Wyatt, I recorded this because, again, I wanted you to hear me. I didn't want you to see my words. I didn't want you to encounter a caricature. I wanted you to see me. I wanted you to see my son back there asleep. And I wanted you to know that this feeling that I have, this desperation I have to save Scott Eizember's life is real. But what's even more real than that is to encourage you, to beg you, to not participate in a system that is going to perpetuate killing. To not participate in a system that's only going to perpetuate death. I am asking you to give life a chance. Not just for Scott's life, but for your life, and for my life, and my son's life. So that the future might belong to life. Not to death, not to more killing, not to more executing, but to life. Miss Wyatt, I am asking you, I am begging you. On December the 7th, 2022, when you go before the clemency board, when Scott Eizember's clemency hearing happens, I am begging you to advocate for life. Ms. Wyatt, regardless of what you choose, know that I will be praying that you might have life and have it in abundance no matter what. I do pray for God's strength for you and your family at this difficult hour.